So I'm making sure that I'm printing on the proper side of the paper, the side that has a sort of pebbly texture and doesn't have the screen texture on it. And if you find it easier, which I sort of sometimes do, putting down the T and bar, that is definitely helpful. So I can work directly on the back, but I do think that it just really becomes possibly easier if you have like a small piece of newsprint that kind of protects you from, and protects the back of the paper as well. So I'm going to just tear a small piece of newsprint and lay it down, and burnishing with a wooden spoon. And I can always peek a little bit to see how well things have or have not transferred. Some of the pressure of my hand. Will help do it. There are also other tools that you could use. The wooden spoon doesn't give you maybe quite as much surface area as some things, but it does give you a little more control. There's also these barons. They're called disc barons. They're made in Japan, and you can get them either covered in corn husks, or you can get them with these like little plastic bead bubbles on them. And again, I actually often like to use another sheet of paper. You can also add what they call camellia oil, which does come in there. It's not in there. It can also be kind of helpful. It gives you a little more smoothness. So the whole idea is to try and transfer your ink in the smoothest way possible. The thing about using the wooden spoon is that it does create a sort of almost a type of mark making as well, which could be an effective sort of texture for the background if you're so desired.
Almost like a direct trace.
Yes, almost like a direct trace. So you can see that with this, you can see a lot of the mark making from the wooden spoon. Maybe by itself it's not quite so interesting, but built up with layers, it could give some really nice effects. So I've added a little bit of black to my blue to kind of create a darker color. It almost looks like a ballpoint pen shade. And I might add actually a little thicker layer of ink too. I think you can keep thinner layers if you're going to print on the press, but if you're hand printing, it's better to probably have a little bit more ink. And notice I'm also inking in several different directions just to make sure that the areas are all inked So now for this one, I'm going to work with a stencil. So instead of my little image being underneath and tracing it, I'm going to lay it down on, well, first I'm going to remove my tape, and then I'm going to lay it down on my field and burnish. So the stencil will act as a resist for any ink. And the stencils, this is just a piece of photocopy paper, so the stencils can be reused over and over again. Once the ink gets built up on them, it kind of adds to the thickness of them. So, set my diatom down there, and then I'm going to place my paper where I can see it. See my registration marks. Allow the ink to kind of hold it in place a little bit, and then put down my newsprint and use my Baron. So all these processes can be done using the press, but my goal is to show you how to do them without the press so that any way of working is possible. Again, I can peek a little bit, and it's a little salty, and also notice that it's a little, the thickness of the photocopy paper is also altering, the contact of the ink to my printing surface, my substrate, which I happen to be printing with BFK today.
Thinking about how you could plan the image so that you could have the stencil as a block and then use the spoon to create concentration around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you could even have something that you laid on top that might have a map of how you might want to burnish it. That's the nice thing about hand burnishing is that you can really direct, how the printing goes. So my edges are a bit soft around this because of the hand burnishing. Oops, and I got a little ink where I didn't want it. But again, this can be just one layer that I continually work on. The other very interesting thing that can happen is I can remove my stencil very carefully. And then I have more ink on here that I can transfer.
Yeah.
The thing about the ghosts is that you may, to be very successful with the ghosts, one may need to use the press. But we're going to give this a try. And you can also start to become sort of methodical about how you burnish, so that you know you've got covered all the areas. So I put that on that previous ghost, and you can see them actually getting some really nice results.